What's the craziest thing you've seen happen in person? I was the only one to see a car accident on a dark road. When I came up to the truck I saw a man with half of his face hanging off. He was trying to pull it off because he didn't know what it was. I ended up holding his face on until the ambulance arrived. I peed next to Bill Clinton at a urinal. I peed next to Charles Barkley at a urinal. We should form a celebrity proximity pee club. When I was on the school bus on the way to elementary school once, I saw a soccer mom in a large minivan plow right into an older man, 60s 70s, on a motorcycle. She was going like 30 and he was stopped and it looked like he was incredibly hurt and unconscious. So the woman got out of her car to see if he was okay. When she walked up to him he turned around and slowly got up, but clearly had a broken leg. He then proceeded to start beating the shit out of her right in front of her kids. Yup. A severely hurt old guy was punching this woman in the face while profusely bleeding. Obviously she just ran away. But to a bus full of elementary schoolers it was like straight out of an action movie. Not violent, so this might not fit in, but pretty crazy anyway. Me and a couple of friends are playing mini golf. And we're waiting for a man and his 4-year-old son ahead of us to finish up. The kid has no idea what's going on, but they're having fun. The next green is a series of obstacles and rocks that lead to a pipe. And the pipe leads to the hole. It's a tricky shot. Par 3 or 4, I think. So the dad places the ball and turns away for a second to go get his putter. The kid swipes his putter like a driver and crushes the golf ball. I mean, it flies. It bounces off rocks. Obstacles. At least a few that were on a different green entirely. And were ducking while it bounces around. Eventually it heads in the direction of the intended green, having bounced over every obstacle. Then the ball calmly rolls onto the green and into the hole. Hole in one. It was pretty crazy. As far as mini golf goes. Spent 5 months in a mental hospital. Saw a lot of crazy shit. One of the worst was a woman who would regularly just squat and take a dump wherever she was. In the middle of the dining area. Outside a patient's bedroom. Anywhere. You learn to ignore a lot of stuff that happens in a mental hospital. But this was one thing that couldn't be ignored. And that was one of the staff. A guy with a hand grenade in a bar. Ready to throw it at a group of dudes he didn't like. Where'd you get that hand grenade? I don't know. TL. DR. I nearly got hit by a flying cow while driving down the road. I was driving FT. Worth to Austin. Doing about 75 or so down the freeway. Up ahead of me was a truck with a single cow trailer in tow. As I am watching, the cow starts walking backwards. It's the back gate. The back gate flies open. And the cow keeps walking backwards. So this cow is suddenly hitting the road at 75 miles per hour. It starts bouncing back down the road. I guess technically it was going forward on the road. But from the perspective of the truck trailer and I, it looked like it was going backwards. Spinning over and over with its legs flailing. 3 thoughts went through my head, in order. That is the most bizarre thing I have ever seen. AWW. That poor animal. Holy FCK, it's coming right for me. I swerved into the next lane just as a half a ton of ballistic hamburger flew by what seemed like within 6 of my fender. I was at a Metallica concert standing next to a shortish marine looking fellow and a huge biker gang looking guy. For some reason they started bickering. Then yelling. Then pushing. Then all out fighting. The marine tried some move. But it was like hitting a brick wall. Oh, seriously. This guy was at least 6'5". 400 pounds. The biker guy picked him up and pillar drived this random dude into the concrete floor. I can still hear the sick thud his head made hitting the ground. Biker just laughed and walked into the crowd. I stayed and gave a report. But I have no idea what happened to either of them. Last thing I saw was the Marine's brother friend whoever talking to the police. Weeping. I spent the next month combing news sites to see if I had just seen someone get murdered at a concert. Messed me up for quite a while. One time I was on the highway driving and these 3 bikes were weaving in and out of cars, acting like lunatics. Eventually one of them slows down and the guy behind him doesn't see it, flies into him, and then he and his bike gets shot into the woods while the other guy skids down the road. Driving by where he flew into the woods you could see torn clothing and an arm hanging in the trees. Turned me off motorcycles. Also one time I saw this kid stick his finger into a foot-long poop his friend dropped for $5 bucks. Somehow the poop story made me feel better. I was in a nasty boating accident and a toddler that was sitting beside me drowned. Had recurring nightmares about it and eventually went to therapy as soon as I could walk again. Homeless guy died a couple of feet away from me at the grocery store I was working at, and while I was calling an ambulance the assholes in line who saw it all were pissed that I took 30 seconds out of their lives by stepping away from the register. It hurt to see how little people cared simply because this guy was homeless. I also saw a drive-by where everyone missed but I was pretty close to it, and another time where a guy did get hit but I was walking the other way so I just ran. In class someone threw a nickel at me from across the room and it landed in my pants pocket. So my wife and I are visiting San Francisco. And we're walking from downtown to Fisherman's Wharf. Downtown has had some shady areas. And the shortest route from our hotel to the touristy areas was right through them. On fine sunny morning we're out walking and we notice on the other side of the street a tall black man dressed in drag. He's walking towards an old woman driving a rascal. As they pass, guy in drag grabs old lady's hair, throws her onto the ground, and yells, "You better pay me my money, bitch." For 2 quiet Canadians it was like stepping onto the set of The Wire or something. I saw a man wearing nothing but big boots and sunglasses stood on the side of a highway while holding a balloon in the other hand. "You want a balloon, Georgie? They float. We all float down here. Georgie boy." I saw a guy get shot. He was trying to cut open the canvas top of a convertible Corvette to attack a guy inside when the guy inside shot him. Turns out the passenger was the wife of the guy outside the Corvette and the shooter was her boyfriend. You know what they say. Never bring a knife to a gunfight. I was at Tanglewood for the final concert of the summer. To end in fireworks and the 1812 overture with real cannons. It got dark. And there were hundreds of people on the lawn. And at the climax when the cannons were firing, they set off the fireworks too close to the ground. Cannons were shooting. And multicolored fire rained down on the audience. It was pretty crazy seeing hundreds of people fleeing for their lives while Tchaikovsky boomed and cracked in the background. And thousands of burning sparks lit up faces and cars as we ran for cover. When I was in HS, me and my friends made a late night food run. I guess someone in the car eyeballed the shit out of a couple guys in an Escalade. They drove up next to our car and both got out pointing guns at our faces. They opened the driver door and beat the shit out of the driver yelling, "Don't be eyeing us, mother efker." I was sitting behind the driver scared shitless. Just a few months ago a friend and I were leaving a party with our wives. We got to a street we had to cross. 3 people stopped because a car was coming. My friend was talking. Before we could grab him he stepped into the path of an SUV. He was knocked 100 feet down the street and was killed instantly. Of course his wife went to pieces. It was a terrible night. In 1972 I saw 5 women jump to their deaths from a 14-story building on fire. Walking to work. 2 cars collide. One flips onto the pavement onto an old man walking, minding his own business. I stayed to give a witness statement. The old man sadly didn't make it. That was a pretty crazy crappy day. Witnessed a guy stick his foot in a tree shredder to unblock it. Didn't end pretty. Give that guy a Darwin Award. At work. I was doing CPR on a woman and she woke up. I stopped CPR and she went unconscious again. Started CPR and she woke up again. After 45 minutes and exhausting every option, the doctor explained that she wouldn't survive. We brought in her relatives to say goodbye and she told us to stop resuscitation efforts and died. When I was in Hawaii, two bums fought over who could sell us weed on Main Street in the middle of the day. None of us smoke. And we told them this. But these guys continued fighting until guy 1 stumbled over this wall that was at least a 10-foot drop. And he broke his neck. Man. That must have been some killer bud. I was waiting to cross the street at a fairly major intersection in the middle of the afternoon. As a woman in a car was waiting to turn left. Man ran up to her car. Opened the door and yelled, "Get out of the car." She screamed and pulled the door shut and floored it out of there. The guy took off running down the street with a passerby chasing him. Eventually they got so far away that I couldn't see if the guy got caught. TL. This guy has been playing way too much GTA. I saw the first plane hit on 911. I was walking across Union Square on a gorgeous September morning and a Refkin airliner flew directly overhead with engines at full blast. Everybody stopped and looked up. Looked around at everybody else like, what the FCK with this idiot, and then went back to going wherever, and 2 steps later I watched the plane fly straight into the North Tower. On a Toronto highway at 1 AM on a weekend there was gridlock traffic. Why? Because of 2 accidents. The first one I didn't witness but saw the result. 4 cars thrown all over the highway. 1 flipped over. 1 smoking. And 1 with a limp body spilling out of it and the other completely totaled. Before driving past the wreckage there were multiple ambulances trying to get through. But some dumbass didn't move aside and caused a collision with an ambulance and 2 other cars, which left the ambulance looking like an accordion. I was stoned, senseless and terrified. I wasn't the driver. It was not a good experience. I once had 2 candy bars come out in one hit from a vending machine. It's like I don't even care what happens for the rest of the day. I saw a crazy grandma going 80 miles per hour in the oncoming lane and being chased by the police coming right at me. Outside smoking while overlooking a parking lot when the sky turned green for a fraction of a second and all the street lights went out. 9/11. That was pretty crazy. Seeing the second plane hit the tower live on the news was pretty surreal. I was working at a nuclear plant on 9/11. The level of freakout on site that day was one of the craziest things I ever saw. Shortly after leaving a dinner, the GF and I were waiting at a stop sign to make the left turn onto the main road. When we see sirens flashing and what appears to be a high-speed chase heading down the road on which we are trying to turn. The little VW comes careening down the street. Tries to do a Fast and the Furious type handbrake turn into the lane next to us. Fails. Smashes into the median separating the lanes. And into a small tree planted there. Tree then proceeds to fall on the car. Guess who walks out? The son of her family's worst enemy. Oh karma. P.S. Had it not been for the median, he would have probably slammed right into us and totaled the car. Edit. Okay. No need to be so touchy. It's not a worst enemy in the Hatfields and McCoys sense. It's merely the pretentious family that tends to talk down to those around them. Her family has a worst enemy? What? Is she a Capulet or a Medici or something? This guy ran a red light and hit 4 old ladies in an Impala. I watched a bear run across a park full of kids on 2 legs. The kids were all screaming and running, but I was safe sitting in my house. I once saw a Navy corpsman shove a frozen hot dog with a condom on it up the rectum of a passed out drunk Marine. This guy was a raging drunk with a real problem. Always getting into fights. Hauled in by the MPs. Etc. Hot dog comes out. Condom stays in. The next morning when he woke up with one of the worst blackout hangovers of his life. He shts out a condom. Swears off drinking for good. Later that afternoon we fed him the hot dog. Later that afternoon we fed him the hot dog. This part did it for me. I saw the DVD logo hit the corner of the screen. 2 plane crashes. The first was Cindy Rooker. She pancaked her stunt-by plane into the ground following a poorly executed loop. Given the conditions. Second was at Orange County Airport, now John Wayne. Guy in a 182 in the Patton 419L lost his engine. Came up short and plowed into a small aircraft holding short for takeoff. The plane he hit was one of Burt Rutan's designs. You said a lot of names and numbers and I don't know any of them. I saw a mentally handicapped kid lick a window. And not just tongue to window. I mean full squat. Into a 5-foot lick. Very strange. I saw my non-mentally handicapped nephew do the same thing. Weird kid. Smart. Though. And really cool. Just weird. I saw an incredibly overweight woman wearing a light dress have a double nip slip while at our state fair. What's worse is that she didn't notice for about 5 seconds. So you stared at an overweight woman's tits for 5 seconds? When I was living on Beaker Street in Nick, I saw a lot of drunk people do dumb, crazy shit. But one night I saw this kid steal a cop car. It was unbelievable.